Welcome to the Legends of Kansas podcast. My name is Brandon McAnderson. I am joined by Chris Harris Jr. We are going to give a season wrap, just a chance for us to talk about this season, craft some of our final opinions as we get ready to shift into the offseason, spring football, recruiting, and all these things that, college football is a year-round sport now. So we want to get these thoughts out, and we'll be back to you in the spring. Chris, what's going on, man? I know you just got through with signing day and some of your connections. Just talk about the craziness around that signing day.
Man, it's a new world, new age of, football. And, my job is just try to make sure these kids understand what they're going into, explain to them what it takes to be a professional, and, just make sure these kids don't get exploited, right? It's a lot of sharks out there trying to exploit these kids and take advantage of them. And that's just my job to help with counseling and, just seeing that went on, and through the whole NIL or through the whole signing day process, it was crazy. I'm pretty sure losing KD Jones was crazy, right? Yeah. For the Jayhawks. But those are things that can happen now, especially in this new age, that you're going to see more and more as we go. But hopefully I didn't get to look at every Kansas recruit. Hopefully we had a good day. It seemed like we signed a lot of guys, so hopefully it went very well for the Jayhawks.
Yeah, it went really well. I think they got everybody they expected. We knew KD Jones was going to be tough because he had been in Oklahoma State immediately once they hired that new coach. We know that communication lines open up. And ultimately, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds have people like Chris Harris because, there's all this talk about legislation, what needs to change, what needs to form. And there's rarely talk about advocacy, player advocacy. There's just no talk about it. I know players have agents now, and that is a form of advocacy, but it's not the same as having people that have been there, gone through it, and can advise and give pointers. Because, one of the things that happened in this KU recruiting class was not just KD Jones, it was JJ Dunnigan, who ended up going to Miami. And in what looked like a financial move. Can you blame the guy? You're the number one player in the state and you're getting offered by the University of Miami. Yeah, take it. If the money's right, take it. This is life-changing money. This isn't just I want to go play for this team because I love them.
But we still have the money to be able to pay a JJ, though.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
My issue. It's like when we have a guy that's like that, we have a $400 million donation, new stadium. He's the perfect guy to be that face of that. You need some dogs. And so I would never, if he's already committed, let's just amp it up. That would have been my advice. Right. Let's keep him in there. Then we can kind of massage everybody else a little bit down, because you need a guy like JJ. We don't want him to go to Miami. Right. So that's kind of what I would have said, and you're going to have to play that game. It's going to be like that. Right. We see it with Oregon. We see it with Ohio State. Like, you got to pay to win. And if you want some super dogs like that, you're going to have to open up that check, man. So that's what I wish we would have done. I wish we could have did it even a little bit more to try to get KD Jones, whatever we got to do to kind of get these real studs, these real diamonds in the roughs that, that want to come here. Let's do whatever we can to lock them in.
And I'm with you. And this was one of the things I wanted to get your opinion on was, Penn State, they fired James Franklin. The recruits pretty much stay stable, but then when it's signing time, they're out of there. James Franklin gets to Virginia Tech. He gets all but Penn State loses all but 2 of their verbal commitments. A majority of the high-priced guys end up going with James Franklin to Virginia Tech. And I saw a Twitter user hop on and say something like, did anybody choose Penn State because they wanted to play for Penn State? So you're with these athletes every day. To me, that mindset is gone. And when money's on the table, it should be. But when you're talking to these kids, that mindset's out the door, correct? Tell me they're not thinking about Penn State. They're thinking about James Franklin, his system, how they fit into it, what the finances are. Talk about how that psyche has changed amongst these athletes.
Well, kids still have their dream schools, right? There's a lot of kids still want to go to Ohio State, OU, the Texas of the world. But the mediocre teams that are not on that high level of status as them, or you say a 5-star teams, right? Universities, anybody else is going to be about business, right? And that's what Ohio State, that's what Texas and those guys do. You might not get paid as much going to those schools, right? But if you keep going a little bit lower and lower, you might get more money. And that's because of the way their style of what they have is every kids, they're still a dream school for kids to go, right? So they can still use that pitch. Right now, Kansas, the state that we're not a dream school for kids to go to. So we're going to have to open up our check. We're going to have to pay a little bit more to get those top guys. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. And that's really why, Kansas has kind of crafted themselves as a developmental program, because they know they aren't a lot of people's dream school, and they're not going to be able to spend at the level of some of the teams that are around them. So, and they've done a good job of it, like Jaylen Daniels, ends up being a 6-year player. This guy was unrecruited. He was committed to Middle Tennessee State, comes here with a big talent profile and just develops over the course of his career. So they've done a good job of bridging that developmental gap. And I agree with you, though, that yes, you're doing the right job on developmental, but sometimes you got to take that shot to get that guy that can really turn this thing around. And, Dunnigan seemed like that type of profile. And, you wish him luck, but he seemed like he could have been a guy that could have done some special things for the Jayhawks. So let's get back into this season for the Jayhawks. Another 5-7 finish. You saw some roster shakeup. You lost your veteran corners last year, Kobe and Melo. You lost some of your offensive line with Bryce Cable-Dew and Logan Brown, 2 starters. So you're going to replace some guys up front on offense. You're going to play some guys on the back end on defense. So those were the big question marks coming in. And when you look at the end of the season, the questions remained unanswered for the most part.
Right.
The offensive line, I would say, underperformed, because if you look at the 2 starters they ended up adding 3 starters, which would be Calvin Clements, Amir Herring, and Enrique Cruz as a transfer from Syracuse. All played pretty solid. The guys on the left, the young guys, Amir Herring's a redshirt sophomore. Calvin Clements is a redshirt sophomore. The left tackle, left guard, had good moments, had bad moments. Clements really struggled against Texas Tech and Kansas State. Those were 2 of his roughest games. Outside of that, he had some good moments. He actually finished the year really strong. I thought Amir Herring was super smart. He's a kind of interior offensive lineman Kansas is really good at developing. I like his future, especially when they do more of the inside zone stuff, inside outside zone. I thought those guys fit well. But ultimately, the season came down to when Kansas needed to run the football, they couldn't. When they wanted to run the football at the rate that they had been over the past 5 years, they couldn't. When Jaylen Daniels over the first 5 games of the season was 18 touchdowns to 2 interceptions and was literally a top 5 player in the country, there was nothing to assist him. Not on the offensive side. There was no run game for him to count on. There was nothing to elevate his play in a way that could have been significant. So one of the things that I do is I make these judgments when I'm at the game, right? And I think this happened. And I'm just telling people this is what happened. Then you go back and watch and you're like, that's not what happened. And that's kind of how I feel about this season. Just describe some of your observations on the offensive side, and then obviously some of your observations on the defensive side, especially on the back end.
There's no consistency in the run game, and we expect that to happen when we've had one guy pretty much be the bell cow for the last 4 years, and he makes everybody first man miss every game, right? So we are replacing the leading rusher in Kansas history, and it definitely showed. And JD didn't have that help from the rushing game this year like he's had in the past. And it showed. It exploited him as the season went on, that we couldn't win off his arm. We needed a balanced attack to go along with a Jaylen Daniels. And when that happens, with our identity kind of takes a step back of who Kansas is. Now we're doing more, gadget plays, scheming up guys instead of just running down their throat, right? So we don't have that type of we stopped doing that identity. So that's one thing I did say on the offensive side, that we got to get back to the run game, being able to have that smash mouth future. Especially if we don't have the quarterback that is a pure pocket passer and that can just sit in that pocket and dice guys up with his arm.
Right. Yeah, and in college, especially in the Big 12, you just need that versatility. You need a guy that can run and pass. Need a guy that can be in that pocket and distribute and make passes. And JD had reached a level. I went back and watched the Texas Tech game yesterday. He was incredible. I mean, he was incredible the whole game. You know how many teams scored 17 points on Texas Tech at Lubbock? No one in the Big 12 scored 17 points. I mean, you're like, oh, it's just 17. No one, right? No one in the Big 12 went over 200 yards passing at Lubbock. Like, this was a defense that just shuts you off. And if you think about it, Jaylen Daniels starts cooking at the end of the first quarter. Second quarter, he just dominates the whole quarter. Third quarter, they get a couple first downs. He has that fumble. Now, the fumble was a bad play, but the play call was a boot where they were blocking Thomas, first team All-American with the tight end, and it put him in a bad spot. And that really killed that drive. So then what happens next? They have to punt. What happens next? They push the ball down into Texas Tech territory. They're 2nd and 1 on Texas Tech's 35 and end up 4th and 10 punting on that same drive. And it was essentially because of a 3rd and 1 play call with a boot, and the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year preseason, Rodriguez was one-on-one with the tight end. He smoked him, sacked him. It's 4th and 10. So up through that part, that was the hardest part of the season. That was through game 7. The guy was excellent. I mean, the guy was a top 5 player in the country. And it was just incredible to watch. But what's interesting about him is it isn't like he struggles, and then, goes in the tank. It isn't like that, because Arizona, he was great. He was great against Arizona. That was another defense. Arizona's number 5 in the nation in completion percentage, number 6 in yards allowed. He exceeds both. So even when you want to say, oh, it was because of JD, he was still playing well inside of there. So he's a guy that just was resilient, kept fighting, and ultimately at the end, he didn't have his best moments when they needed to down the stretch, but a guy that had a great career, and a guy that the first half of the season, man, was about as good a quarterback as you could play at Kansas.
Yeah, he was hot definitely in early in the season. Like I said, the offense kind of got exploited at the end, especially as that weather started changing, and we had some tough games on the road. When you go on the road, you got to be able to run the football. We had a good game at Arizona. I thought definitely had a chance to win that game. We just didn't close it. And just with a little bit more help, I just thought we kind of tried to out scheme a lot of teams. And, the scheme was just a little bit different, trying a little trickery instead of just playing a little bit more smash mouth and relying on Highshaw and the running backs to get downhill. The scheme didn't fit the running backs that we had, and it showed. And hopefully next year we're able to get that adjusted. The offensive line, like you said, they didn't play the best to their ability, but they did open up some big runs. We did have some big holes. Maybe if we put in Marshall a little bit more, he's more of a home run hitter. We could have used him a lot more. So there's things, I think they'll evaluate, find a way to get Henderson more involved, things like that. We missed him on probably 400 yards worth of receiving yards for this season. So there's things in there that JD is definitely going to go back and, be mad at himself. But overall, he had a great career. This year it didn't finish how he wanted to finish. But, man, hey, you got to tip your hat to JD and what he did in that community in the last 6 years of leading this team with utmost character and, as a perfect student athlete. So you got to salute him, man. So it's hard for me to say anything bad about him, right? But, he did need help. He didn't get the proper help in the run game that he usually has, and it showed. But salute to JD, man. We appreciate everything that he did as a Jayhawk. And hopefully he gets a shot to get better going into the NFL Combine or Pro Day, and maybe he gets a chance to show what he can do.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite players to watch ever in Kansas, and I've been watching my whole life. The guy just had the highest of the highs and did it in a way that was just beautiful to watch. Defensively, you move over to the defensive side of the football. We talked preseason, like, hey, if you want to compete for a Big 12 championship, you got to get somewhere around 20 turnovers. I mean, every team since 2021, Chris, has forced at least 20 turnovers. In a possession league like the Big 12, you need extra possessions. Kansas just couldn't find a way to get them. Even when they were getting them, they were just, God just dropped it here or there. Ended up on the season with 4 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries, 6 turnovers, fell far short of what that goal was. And there's a lot of reasons that came to it. Like I said, there was drops and things that could have happened. There were opportunities to get turnovers that they couldn't finish. But this is just something that they have to create moving forward. They've got to be able to create turnover opportunities, because in the Big 12, you got to get extra possessions. What do you see from that group, and how do you think that they can use some of these guys to advance that forward?
My biggest thing, pet peeve of watching the games is tackling. Just tackling. We were probably the worst tackling team in the league. Linebackers missed tons of tackles. I think we can go and look at the analytics. Those guys missed 20 tackles each.
I think Bengali was number 1 in the country.
and missed tackles. Right. So I'm not far off, right? I'm telling you, from watching it. I'm telling you, there's the missed tackles, miscommunication in the backfield, guys not all being on the string, not all playing the same coverage. Jalen Todd had a solid year. Gibbs, I thought he came in and played solid. But we got him in late. So they're young. So hopefully, depending on what goes on with the portal, I haven't seen if any of the guys hit the portal, but you're pretty sure, every school is happening.
Right.
Somebody's gonna hit it. But when you look at Leroy Harris, you have somebody you can build off of up front. What's the other kid? Let me look at I got the list of names.
They got Dak Brinkley up there.
Brinkley,
fellow, number 9.
Yeah, Brinkley. I think Brinkley probably graded out one of the highest on the defense.
Absolutely. Big
so
time upside.
Right. So we still got some. We don't know what's going to happen with Trey Lathan. Right, a guy that
love to have him back.
He was all over the field, but we missed a lot of tackles. But hey, we'll take him back. Especially being an impact player. But the interceptions is something that you say we didn't affect the game enough. We didn't affect the quarterback at all, and then we weren't in confident positions to make plays in the secondary. 4 interceptions in college football is terrible. Right.
It's a low number.
It's terrible because you have quarterbacks that you can you should be able to disguise yourself in at least 10 picks in college football. Right. I feel like I can scheme up and be able to trick the quarterback to throw me 10. Right. And then the rest is like, hey, we're going to be able to somebody has to make a great play. Somebody tip the ball in the air, tips and overthrows. 4 interceptions is very bad. Right. Yeah. So that's something that we prided ourselves in the past year where our corners each had 4 picks and the safety might add in 3, so that was completely opposite of a Lance Leipold defense. And with that, we're not giving JD opportunities to be able to have short field positions to score. We're not scoring on defense. So I would say we took a major step back on the defensive side of the ball. And that's something that I wish we got to address that, especially in the offseason.
Yeah, that was something that, from a talent perspective, we saw this linebacking core and thought, man, this is a improved group from last year. We saw the front 7 at the defensive line. We're like, this is a comparable group to last year. Most of the guys are back. You added Leroy. Brinkley's an exciting player. I thought Blake Harold was awesome this year. So, Tommy Dunn Jr., Keenan Caldwell. So lots of good players up there. But, Chris, this rush defense in yards per carry, Kansas has not been higher than 82nd. Since Lance Leipold joined the University of Kansas. No other Big 12 team has been below 82nd the whole time, just us. So I went to maybe it's got to be yards per game then, something. No, we're back in the same thing. We've never been higher than 79th in yards per game rushing. Every other Big 12 team has recorded a number higher than that. So it's not just that, they're not improving in the area because you go 21-22, Kansas 128. 22-23, Kansas 125th. 23-24, they were 96th. Last year, they got up to 79th in yards per game, which is the highest number they've had. It does not. I know we were top 10. So I know it was at times 1 or 2 for that rush defense. This team rankings only went back to 2011. Could not find a number higher than 79th against rush defense. It's just unsustainable. It's unsustainable to give nearly 5 yards a carry to a running back, knowing that even a running team that is thinking to themselves, how do we stay in this game? They're thinking about getting 4 yards a carry. They're not even banking on the 5. So when you get up to that high of a number, it's hard to play defense.
And that comes to, we definitely need to invest in some more big boys, getting guys that are run stuffers, right? And that's where you go in the portal. And, a lot of those guys aren't. They're going to cost, right? They're going to cost. It costs money to get run stoppers, big boys up front, edge rushers, right? So hopefully they take that approach in the portal as, hey, we got to get some dogs up front offensively and defensively. Our secondary, hey, we might treat them as a developmental group. Hey, they're young, they have talent, they have nice size, right? Let's develop those guys, even though we didn't get the production out of those guys. Let's develop them. But up front, we got to have a philosophy is, hey, we might have to pay for a premium for a guy up front every year. And we're seeing that with Texas Tech, what they do. They went and got premium rushers. Right.
3 of them.
Yeah, so you gotta do that. We gotta get some big boys up front. I put the thumbs up and it popped up on the screen. But
Hey,
hey, we gotta invest in the big guys. So that would be my philosophy if I'm up there. You can't win with the guys up front, and we can develop
yeah,
the skill guys. We can train those guys up, because when you really think about it, everybody's fast. Everybody can run nowadays. Everybody has some size. So let's just develop the techniques and the fundamentals and the scheme that we need to do. The guys still don't. From watching them, it doesn't look like they really understand the defense in the secondary or as a total or as a totality. So let's keep developing those guys, but we got to find a position group to invest. And I'm good with it if we do it in the D line and the O line.
absolutely. They've already made one investment. They signed Jabril Condi from Grand Valley State, who was a #1 defensive lineman in the portal when they signed him. He was a flip from Wisconsin. So that's right on what you said. They went out and got a guy. He's 6'6", 280, a guy that can be a bit of a tweener in the kind of defenses they like to play. So another person they can pop in there. And I honestly just love the way you talk about it, because you come from a pro background, pro perspective, tons of experience. And then you come down to training players, understanding the NIL market. I like what you said about, is this a position you're going to decide this is a developmental position? Is this a position where you're going to decide, is this somewhere we have to go get a guy? And that's going to be all over Kansas's roster this offseason, starting at quarterback, where they've got 3 options they really like, but all are unproven. Is this a spot where you go developmental, or is this a spot where you go to the portal? What would you say to that?
Right now we would have to go in the portal, because I think it's getting kind of hot up there with Coach, with the record that we had this season. So we got to try to get some instant success. There's going to be 4,000 to 5,000 guys in the portal, right? So it's got to be some guys over there, probably more twos, right? It's more backups guys that are in there, but it got to be somebody over there that we can be able to try to be able to plug and play fast. And but you still got to have your development. You still got to have your guys that you want to train, you want to develop, and that may be like 15 to 20 guys. You never know. But the other rest, they got to be guys that can come in and play now and kind of change the team. So whatever that investment is, good thing they did get the D lineman, they got the D tackle. Now let's go get one more. We need one more rusher, right?
Yeah.
Let's go add somebody else that can go across from Leroy Harris and be a problem like a Bailey, like Texas Tech guy, right? Yeah. And they're out there.
Absolutely. And it really is about that choice. It's about that developmental piece. And one of the things that I liked about what Coach Leipold said at the end of the season was, like, maybe we're a little bit further ahead than we expected to be, but now we have to make a leap in the football part. Because it's like you said, when you look at the bodies, right? Like, we had this debate mid-season where I'm like, these guys are definitely more talented. And you're like, maybe not from a football perspective, but they might be more physically talented, but they're not from a football perspective. So now I think that the challenge for this staff in the offseason is bridging the gap with all this physical development and improvement and combining that with football, because I think that's the opportunity, right? For 2 years in a row, a lot of their losses have come down to lack of execution at the end of the game. Sometimes it was a play's there to be made, and it's a 50-50 thing, and the other guy makes a play. Sometimes it's been nobody wants to make a play, and it's been either way, but it's really been about, can Kansas execute in the most important moments of the game? And in the last couple of years, they've fallen short. Coach Leipold has acknowledged that and said, this is the challenge this offseason. So we're excited to see how he tackles and addresses it. Chris, it's been awesome doing the Legend of Kansas podcast with you. We'll be back in the spring, man. Rock chalk.
Yes, sir, man. Like I said, man, Jayhawk through and through, man. And I want to see us succeed and want to see the program continue to get back to where we had it. And, just this year just wasn't the type of level that I expected. And especially with a lot of guys that we had coming back. But, this is a good time to regroup. I'm pretty sure they'll regroup the whole thing, change a lot of things, and hopefully they do. And we start to get some results coming next year, because next year will be huge for Coach Leipold, for real.
Absolutely, and changes are all around us. Kansas State has moved on from their head coach. Iowa State's coach just got picked up by Penn State's coach. So we have another new head coach in the Big 12. So things are changing every day. Colorado is looking at the go-go offense and Brennan Marion. So there's going to be all kinds of fun, important, cool stuff happening in the Big 12. We'll keep you posted. Thanks for joining us. Rock Chalk.
Oh, yeah. Later.